People are vanishing in plain sight, not through death or tragedy, but by quietly slipping away from the structures everyone else calls life. Careers, relationships, cities, social media, they're leaving it all behind. And while most never notice, you might feel it too. A pull to step back, a strange inner knowing that participation feels heavier than disappearance. You were taught that society is where meaning lives, that belonging is the goal, and to withdraw from it is failure, weakness, or antisocial rebellion. But what if that belief itself is an illusion? What if disappearance is not a sign of collapse, but the natural progression of awakening? Look around closely, and you begin to notice the pattern. Those who are most awake are not storming out in protest. They are quietly slipping away, as though answering a call that only they can hear. Once your awareness sharpens, ordinary participation begins to feel unbearable. Every conversation demands a mask. Every environment pressures you to play a role, nodding along as though you cannot see beneath the surface. But you do see. You see the shadows people throw onto each other. You see the projections disguised as opinions, the lies society repeats until they become gospel. And what once looked like normal life now feels like a play where everyone is reciting lines in their sleep, unaware the script is false. Remaining in those spaces becomes its own form of violence against yourself. To belong, you must dim your perception. To be accepted, you must silence your truth. To survive, you must act as though blindness is wisdom. The tension builds in your body and mind, not because you are weak, but because truth cannot live comfortably in falseness. It tears at you, quietly at first, then relentlessly, and eventually, the only honest choice is to step away. Here lies the unsettling revelation. Society is not merely sprinkled with unconsciousness, it is constructed from it. The shared illusions, the scapegoating, the unquestioned rules, these aren't flaws in the design, they are the design. And once you stop feeding them, you no longer fit. You become the glitch in what others insist is reality. This is why the spiritually awake begin to disappear, not because they despise the world, and not because they believe they are above it. They leave because their being has outgrown the container. Once the curtain has been pulled back, you cannot return to pretending. Once you know, you cannot unknow. And so, the path begins with disappearance, not as failure, but as the first act of fidelity to your own awakening. Once the curtain has been pulled back, awareness does not stop at recognition. It deepens into sensation. You don't just see through illusions, you feel them pressing against you. Awakening sharpens not only perception, but sensitivity. What once seemed like harmless chatter, political debate, or entertainment now strikes your nervous system like static. Crowds, workplaces, and digital spaces begin to feel heavy, not because you dislike people, but because you can feel the unconscious material they're swimming in without knowing it. It is like entering a storm no one else acknowledges. Around you, people shout about truth and justice, certain of their positions, blind to the shadows driving them. Yet you see it clearly, groups projecting their own darkness onto others, calling the projection evil, while refusing to face it within themselves. To them, it feels righteous. To you, it feels like watching a crowd wrestle with its reflection in the dark. You cannot unsee what you've seen, and so participation becomes impossible. This sensitivity explains why digital spaces are often the first to go. Social media, once a casual pastime, begins to feel like an endless shadowboxing arena. Each scroll bombards you with projections, outrage, denial, and blame disguised as virtue. To the unconscious, this is normal exchange. To the awakened, it is psychological violence, an assault of unresolved material spewed into the collective. The soul resists absorbing it, and eventually, the only sane response is to step away. The same pattern unfolds in personal and professional spaces. A meeting at work turns into a theater of masks, everyone playing roles, speaking lines expected of them. A gathering with friends feels less like connection and more like a rehearsal of identities that no longer fit. For someone still asleep, this is life. For you, it is suffocation. Each environment asks you to betray the truth you've uncovered, to climb back into the dream. But the awakened cannot shrink themselves back into comfort once they've touched reality. So the weight of seeing becomes too heavy to carry in public spaces. Withdrawal does not arise from superiority, nor from disdain. It comes from incompatibility. The deeper your consciousness grows, the more foreign unconscious environments feel. And as this tension builds, your soul whispers what your mind already knows. It is time to step back, not to abandon life, but to protect the life within you that has finally begun to awaken. When the weight of seeing grows unbearable, the next step becomes inevitable. Vision alone is heavy, but vision combined with sensitivity becomes unsustainable. The soul begins demanding release. Withdrawal is not chosen in anger. It rises like instinct, like survival. You realize that remaining in unconscious environments is not only exhausting, it is depleting the very consciousness you worked so hard to cultivate, and so begins the quiet exodus. This exodus is rarely dramatic. There are no grand speeches or angry farewells. Instead, there is a slow peeling away from what no longer fits. A job quietly resigned, a social media account suddenly inactive, a friendship left to fade when it insists on an old version of you. From the outside, it might look like collapse or failure. From within, it feels like liberation, like finally stepping out of a burning room into fresh air. The body confirms what the soul has whispered. Fatigue, illness, depression, symptoms that medical tests cannot explain, begin to lift when you leave draining environments. Energy returns not because you've fixed yourself, but because you've stopped pouring light into voids that only consume. Like water poured into sand, your consciousness can never be sustained in places that refuse to hold it. Withdrawal becomes the only way to protect what is sacred inside you. This is why the awakened gravitate towards solitude, nature, or smaller conscious circles. It is not escape from responsibility, it is conservation. Consciousness is finite. It cannot be endlessly spent on shadow projections, energy vampires, or endless dramas without eroding. To disappear into silence is to honor that limit, to protect the flame that mass unconsciousness would otherwise extinguish. And so the silent exodus unfolds everywhere. One leaves the corporate tower for a cabin by the sea. Another abandons the online crowd to tend a garden. Another trades a crowded city for a quiet town where masks are thinner. Each departure looks like absence, but in truth, it is presence. Presence with the soul, with authenticity, with the life that no longer needs permission from collective illusions to breathe freely. The silent exodus leads somewhere. It is not simply a retreat into nothingness, but a passage into the hermit's path. After peeling away from environments that drain you, you step into a space that at first feels empty, even disorienting. Yet in that emptiness lies the soil of transformation. Solitude begins its quiet work. Silence becomes the teacher. Withdrawal turns into initiation. In this space, masks lose their grip. Without the demand to perform, you begin to sense who you are beneath the roles. The shadows you once buried surface, not to shame you, but to integrate into your wholeness. The parts of you fragmented by years of pretending start weaving together into something unified, something real. What once felt like abandonment of society reveals itself as a deeper arrival into yourself. Parables from every tradition echo this stage. Prophets, sages, and visionaries withdrew before they returned with wisdom. The seed must rest underground before it can pierce the soil. The pearl forms in the dark shell before it shines. Solitude is not exile, it is gestation. In disappearing from the noise of the collective, you are not hiding from life. You are preparing to bring forth something life itself has not yet seen. This path requires courage. To walk away from applause, to leave behind recognition, to step into silence without promise of reward, it unsettles the ego. Yet what emerges in solitude is beyond what society can give. You begin to realize that authenticity is oxygen, and without withdrawal, you would keep suffocating under the weight of old roles. Stepping away becomes not an act of rejection, but an act of fidelity to truth. And so, the hermit's path shapes you quietly, beyond the gaze of the world. In that hidden chamber, wisdom ripens, depth anchors, and clarity takes root. Society may call it disappearance, but in truth, it is refinement. You are not vanishing into nothingness. You are becoming something that cannot be formed under the constant pressure of collective illusions. Solitude does not last forever. Just as the seed eventually breaks the soil, the hermit's path bends toward a return. Yet this return is not what many expect. You do not re-enter society to blend back into unconsciousness. You come back carrying something different, something the silence has shaped in you. The return is quieter, subtler, and often invisible to those still asleep. Instead of rushing into the center of collective life, you gravitate toward the edges, margins where authenticity can breathe, where consciousness can live without compromise. Some return as artists who translate depth into form. Others emerge as healers, walking beside those awakening to their own storms. Still others become quiet builders, weaving small communities of truth amid the noise. The work is never about rejoining the mainstream. It is about creating alternative spaces where light can endure. Society often misreads this. From the outside, it looks like loss. Why are the most insightful voices withdrawing when they are needed most? But the answer is paradoxical. What looks like absence is preparation. What feels like abandonment is architecture. Those who disappear are not deserting the world. They are constructing the foundations for what the world will one day need. This is why the awakened never truly return as they once were. Once you have lived from the depth of solitude, you cannot go back to shallow performance. Once you have seen through collective illusions, you cannot pretend blindness. Your role changes from participant to guide, from member of the crowd to quiet beacon at its edges. You remain present, but no longer absorbed. You are available, but not consumed. And so, the invisible return unfolds. A handful of words written in a book that finds the right reader. A piece of art that carries hidden medicine. A conversation that awakens a soul ready to hear. The return is rarely grand, but its impact is immeasurable. You do not come back to play the old game. You come back to shine from the edges, offering a path for those who will one day follow the same journey into disappearance, transformation, and return. If you feel the pull to withdraw, know you are not broken. You are not failing society. You are outgrowing it. Disappearance is not an end, but a passage, a sacred step in the rhythm of becoming whole. You are leaving behind the noise so that silence can teach you. You are stepping away from performance so authenticity can anchor you. So disappear consciously, withdraw with purpose. Let solitude shape you into something deeper than the world can currently hold. And when the time comes to return, return not as one who betrayed their path, but as one who fulfilled it. Society does not need more masks. It needs awakened souls who chose wholeness over belonging and truth over comfort. If you are disappearing, you are not lost. You are becoming.